Thank you, Chairman. I can confirm we're now live streaming. I'll hand the meeting over to yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to what I hope is going to be the last joint committee meeting in a virtual world. Let's keep our fingers crossed on that score. So we have a fairly busy agenda today. So we turn without further ado, please, to item 1, the minutes of the previous meeting. Are there any comments, observations that anyone wishes to make? And if not, Julie, Teresa, can we formally adopt those, please, in the virtual world that we currently live in? And hopefully next time we'll be able to do something slightly different with a pen, maybe. Jolly good. So item 2 then is apologies.
Chairman, we have no apologies, but Councillor Alison Chubbuck is going to be late because she has another meeting and she won't be attending until probably about 11:30.
Yes, I gather she's being trained into how to run meetings or something. Is that right? Not too sure. Jolly good. And Paul Corney is going to step into her shoes to deliver a little bit of financial advice, I gather. I don't have any items of urgent business. And item 4, I think we can all take as read. If there's any declarations that people wish to make at the time that they haven't already made, then please will they do so. Which takes us on to item 5, performance report, and it's Stuart, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to go through the highlights of the current performance report, which was circulated to all the members. Just to start with business rates, all the revised targets, as we all know, there's been numerous amounts of grants be flying around all over the partnership and all over the country as well. So the grants, and the good thing is the targets which were redone over the year, all targets have now been met or are now being met, the revised targets in light of the grants going along. I don't know whether, Joe, you want to add anything to add on to that? Anything?
No, just to say that we had one authority, Suffolk, that was behind target, but I'm now pleased to say we're back on target with that one.
Oh, that's good news.
Thank you. And on the CTAC side of things, this is the one which is under target, with all of the changes and the effect on our residents with the hardship and with magistrates' courts not being able to run until December. That has really affected our ability to collect and to follow up with the magistrates' courts, which are now now being undertaken. So we expect that to improve as time goes on, but it has been a very difficult year for so many people unable to pay their council tax and for us to bring the numbers in. So we'll watch that closely to see what happens in the new year. Fraud, generally over the partnership has continued identifying significant amount of attempted fraud, particularly on the single person discount, which is amounting to nearly half, just over half of the entire fraud from just a compliance point of view. So that, again, that's not anything new, but I just sort of flagged that up as it is over half of the fraud being identified since we last spoke. So moving on to enforcement, and visits restarted around about August time. But again, it's the restrictions from the pandemic have really affected their ability to engage with the customer. And there has been a significant drop, as you can see on the performance report there, a significant drop in the amount of collection through the enforcement team. Again, is there anything you want to say on that, Joe? Or is that enough?
No, I mean, we've tried to make extended arrangements with customers and help them all we can. We are back out visiting, but obviously we're restricted. We're not going in people's homes, but you know, we're doing what we can.
Thank you. So moving on to NDR, as it currently is, there's now been another peak of work from the current situation, and not just that, as that we're now heading into our annual billing cycle. The council tax bills amounting to just over 351,000 bills have now been produced by our external mailer, and East Cambs and Fenland are now hitting the mats, and the e-billing of West Suffolk should be with the customers over the next 48 hours. So rather pleased with what's happened this year so far with the bills, and also just to say, with the take up of e-billing, we are now standing at around about just short of 24,000 of our residents who've opted for the e-billing option through rather than having a physical letter coming through the post. So that's really the highlights that I'd like to cover during the performance report. If you've got any questions there, if I can't answer them, I'll pass them over to either Joe or to Adrian, if you've got anything to ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. That's comprehensive. So, colleagues, do we have any questions we wish to raise of either principal officers or even Adrian, who's hiding his light under the bushel at the moment there? Yes, Sarah.
Yeah, how are we promoting e-billing?
Yeah, the e-billing is more with the customer services, and a general, that's part of the customer strategy group as well, of what is the best way to get that. It is a slow build at the moment, and that slow build is, we're always going to be chasing our tail, because people do move out of the area, and we get a significant number of change of addresses, which for every 10 that move out, you're going to be losing those 10 e-billing. So you're always getting some coming off. So although they've added another 8,000 this year since last annual billing, it's actually they've lost another 12,000, that sort of thing, if that makes sense. So it's a bit frustrating. Just, we don't want people to move, then that'd look a lot better.
Paul, please.
Just remember to take myself off mute. There's one other factor actually linked to it, is that because of council tax bill, the very nature of it means that people are only looking once a year. In general, I know there's sometimes customers will be more, but most people only look once a year. What we'd really like to do, and we're working with the customer sort of group, which is basically the heads of the customer teams for all of the authorities, is to try to link the CRM systems that you guys have to our e-billing, so that when someone's looking, they're logging into the whole council services, and they seamlessly see our part of that in the background and can look at their council tax through that route. If that's so, through a single sign-on is the term that's usually used. So that's something we're trying to look at. East Suffolk do already have that available. And then if people are signing up to the council services and then to the ARP services in the background of that, they're much more likely to then be using those services, because they might look up bins and everything else. And then council tax just becomes one of those services that they're viewing online. So that's also strategically where we want to go with it, to try and increase the number of council tax e-billing recipients who would do it that way.
Oh, well, that sounds like an eminently suitable proposal. In actual fact, are there any barriers that you're aware of that might prevent that happening, Paul?
At the moment, not all councils have CRM, so it will depend on their own sort of future, how they take things forward themselves. But certainly that's where we want to work with those that do. So East Suffolk have a system at the moment. Others are looking at CRM as to whether it's strategically the way they want to go within each authority. And as they sign up to it, then happy to have what we call the APIs, the sort of links that allow you to draw that data through. So one of the things that we would always try to work with the IT teams on is that and the customer teams, is that as they're choosing any relevant system that they want to use, that it would be hopefully capable of doing this. It all depends strategically what each council decides it's doing from a customer perspective. I know we were working with Breckland as well around the GOS product to try and do the same thing, and Breckland are then sort of revisiting how they want to do this at the moment. So, but we work with each team to try and make that happen.
Good. So all councils, partner councils are aware of the opportunity, let's put it that way, and you're briefing the various IT teams, I guess, on what may or may not be required to bring everyone into a position where we can do this and have this joined up thinking.
Yeah, that's about right, really, because it's obviously as each council develops its strategy, it can either link straight through what we do if there is no additional CRM that they're offering. But if they're offering additional CRM, it allows someone to sign in to that product and then through the back of the product to then sort of view your council tax bill and everything else online as well. So East Suffolk are doing with Firmstep at the moment, and they've successfully got this working. Others would be able to do the same, so long as their systems allow for that to be built into it when they look at their future strategy. If not, there's still the ARP Capita product that allows people to view the bills online without having to go through any sort of first product. But I think it's going to be more successful if someone is going to look at all council services, has a log on to do so, and one of those services is council tax. So that it builds that single sign-on approach. They're much less likely then to, what we get a lot of people forget their password every year because it's only used once a year. It's those sort of issues that stop people from signing up to it, I think, really. So that would be the future strategy. We're talking to the customer strategic group, so the customer services leads. Okay, and it seems to me that we probably need an update at our next meeting on this topic to see how all of us are either migrating services onto the platform or utilising existing platforms so that we can provide that link. Because you've said so many times in the past to us that the future for ARP is AI, it is single point of contact, and that's what drives efficiency, really. And the efficiency isn't just our efficiency, it's our residents' efficiencies as well in being able to do what we want. So colleagues, do you think that's something that we might want to bring back at our next meeting as a topic to see how far we're progressing? I'll take silence as
Chairman, I would say definitely, because potentially this is an enormous cost saver, isn't it? It
absolutely is, absolutely is. But, yeah, but of course the problem we've got is that we need to bring all the authorities into a position where their own IT systems are able to cope with this without huge expense necessarily on the IT systems in those authorities. So I think, Paul, as you're the common link, let's put it that way, in delivering this particular ambition, perhaps you could bring a paper to us next time, even if it's a paper that comes to hopefully our 10 o'clock meeting, if it's not going to be formally adopted at our 11 o'clock.
That's actually a very good idea, isn't it? Would everyone be happy with that if we brought sort of an update to the 10 o'clock meeting that can then take you through how we're working with each council around the customer journey generally, but particularly around use of websites and automation? Does that make sense?
Looks like it.
Can I just say something? We really need to have a target where we're trying to achieve to go to e-billing as well. Don't you agree? Otherwise, we just have this idea, but we really should be a target where, you know.
I quite agree. I mean, 24,000 residents at the moment is a drop in the ocean, isn't it? Mm. Notwithstanding the fact it's a good number to have, it's still a long way to go. So part of Paul's, I think, presentation to us should actually put out a current trend, a roadmap of how we might actually start delivering this service in that fashion. And then that will enable us to move on to the next step, I would imagine. Does that make sense?
It does. I can talk as well to the chair of the customer strategic group, and she might well present it with me and talk about what the group are designing and how they're doing so. Good.
Excellent news. Thank you for that.
Chair.
Yes, David.
Yeah, I just question whether June is too soon for Paul to get that information together. That's in your hands, Paul, but is it soon?
It would be useful if it was September, because we've got quite a lot of COVID-related aspects still to work out. Plus we've got our later paper that we're looking at, which is going to cause its own work. And then essentially as well, it gives a piece of time to really build that picture with each of the partners. So September would be better.
I understand that.
Thank you.
Can we take that as a resolution then, that September meeting we will have Paul's paper?
And are we saying that's the pre-meeting, Chair?
I would like to suggest the pre-meeting at the moment, because otherwise it might put you under pressure to get something more worked through to present to us. If I suspect it'll raise some questions which we as members might need to address. So I'd rather perhaps that we had that pre-meeting and then from there we can roll into it. But I think it would be very helpful to have an indication of what your aspiration for take-up might be as well. Anything else for the team on this particular agenda item? Well, I've got one, and it's really an update, please. I obviously we're all aware of the council tax issues and the fact that we're not collecting as much as we anticipated. But business rates generally have held up very well, with one exception, and it's down to Fenland and the court case, I believe, that's now been appealed by the NHS. Is that correct? Do we have an update on whether that's likely to have an impact across other authorities?
Yes, if I may answer that. The appeal is still ongoing. There are no further updates, and that primarily affects West Suffolk, Fenland and East Cambs off the top of my head.
Yes.
But it is still ongoing. There is no further update.
The reason I asked the question was that it's only Fenland that shows it red at the moment, and that's down to, as it says in the notes, I think, effectively down to the uncertainty about the court case. But obviously, if it's going to affect other authorities as well, that appeal, that may then have an impact on the collection rates in other authorities as well. That's the only reason I mention it.
I think the Fenland is marked red because that was last year.
Oh, I beg your
pardon. But the current year, I think, is on target.
Okay, good. I beg your pardon. In which case, if there's nothing else for Stuart on that, can we move on to item 6, which is the Ali Chubbuck / Paul Corney show?
So take myself off mute there. So basically, it's a similar picture really to the last picture that we saw going back to the September reports. This obviously as at end of December. And what we're looking at is a predicted deficit of about 492,000. Well, that's the estimated deficit. And that is in the main due to that loss of enforcement income that we've discussed earlier. But as you can see, so that's shown at 1.2 in the report, but as you can see, 1.4, that deficit is actually we're looking to offset it through the income compensation scheme that the government introduced. So you lose the first percentage, but then you get 75p in the pound of lost income. And the enforcement income is one that we've put forward in that way. So what that shows therefore is that it's a balanced picture in terms of almost hitting the actual budget figure in the end, with that compensation taken into account. So you can see that through the report and in the appendices.
Yep.
Then Appendix A does show the other reason why we're not seeing a worse position, which relates to the salary underspends. These are the ones that we built into the budget for next year as well. There's actually 9 FTE equivalent posts deleted in next year's budget, which again is demonstrating that's the success of automation. Although that's not the whole picture with that, but certainly that's a large part of the reason for that improved picture. I don't know if there's any questions that anyone has on the budget, otherwise on the position in the third quarter.
Are we content with the budget as it's been presented? comments? Or do we have any questions?
I'm content.
Thank you, David. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, and hopefully we'll be able to redress that balance with the 75% support. Paul.
Chair, if I could indulge everyone just a little bit, because I did mean to say this at the end of Stuart's report. Clearly, we need to, I think, thank him for his service over the years, because actually Stuart is leaving us on the 31st of March, or at the end of March. And I did mean to say at the end of his performance report that that'll be the end of the Stuart show. And just wanted to thank him for all the years that he's worked with us and for the fantastic service he's provided.
I can only endorse that comment, actually, Paul. I was going to raise that and another item relating to the lady who's sitting on your right, my left as I look at her, Jo, because she's got a report to give us as well. And of course, you've just highlighted the voids in the establishment, and we have two sitting in front of us at the moment who won't be with us next time. So perhaps when we get towards the end of the meeting, we can do something different. That'd be good.
Thank you, Chair.
Are we content? David, you want to say something up there? No? Okay. In which case, can we move on, please, to item 7? I don't think we need to do anything with the budget. We just note it. So we have noted it. Thank you for that, Paul. Moving on to agenda item 7 then, performance framework.
Okay, thank you. Back in 2019, a consultancy exercise was carried out because we needed to look at performance governance. We've got lots of data, but we need a consistent approach to reporting against agreed targets. So each team looked at its objectives against the strategic priorities that we developed a year or so ago, and identified the critical success factors to allow us to meet those objectives. Consideration was given to the targets and measures. It has been reviewed by customer services, and they have had input into the targets, but there are other measures that need to be added, such as around avoidable customer contact. But that will take some developing, but we felt we needed to get something in place, and we can always add to our dashboards. We're suggesting the data is displayed on dashboards, and these are going to be designed so we can add and remove as we see fit. Appendix B on the report, I think it's Appendix B, shows the targets and measures that we're suggesting. And as I say, we're suggesting we report it as dashboards. So what we're doing is developing dashboards along each strategic priority. So there'll be one dashboard on sustainability that will show all the financial data, one on customer, which will show all our telephone handling stats, how quickly we're processing work through the system. And we hope to be able to use that to share all our measures and targets through use of SharePoint. But obviously, in the meantime, it's something that we can email around and share with everybody. So happy to take any questions on that. Any comments?
Jo. Any questions for Jo, please? Goodness, stunned silence.
Actually, I'd just like to add, we were talking about, Councillor Broughton was asking about e-billing sign-up. One of the measures in there is for e-billing sign-up, and the target we have for that in the first instance is 10%, which would be something like 38,000 sign-ups. So we're on the way there, but obviously we've got a lot more work to do on that.
True enough. Given where we are in the sort of the beginning of the end of the pandemic and moving hopefully on to slightly more constructive things in the future. On page 48, we've got the performance management roles. We've got the approving ARP plans and strategies for this joint committee on an annual basis. Is there a view that we might need to do a mid-year review? Given everything that's been happening thus far in the last 12 months and moving into some new ground, as we've just been discussing. I'm not suggesting it is. It was merely a thought I had when I was going through the papers.
Chair, if I may.
Please.
I think that's a good idea. I think, again, like our previous report, it depends on what we have presented in the first place. So let's see what we get, and then let's make the decisions then to see the shortfalls or the applauding that we have to do on what we have presented to us. I think it's too early to say, but I do agree with you. There's likelihood to have it more than once a year.
Does anyone else have a view? Paul, as you're the one who's going to be presenting all of this, and we're going to be leaning on you, what's your thoughts?
I think that's a good idea. Just a little bit more information, perhaps, of exactly what you want to see in the review. This is a sort of like a performance framework that we've generated. A lot of the data we already held, but we're pulling it together into a proper performance framework for each team to be able to review performance, at each level. So we can bring something back to you. It's just a little bit of clarity over exactly what you'd like us to do, so we work on the right thing for you and bring you what you're asking for.
Okay, well, as I look at page 48, the joint committee approves, the role of the joint committee, that's us, is to approve ARP plans and strategies, but we do it on an annual basis. It's really that element I wondered whether we should review after 6 months, because things have been fundamentally different over the last 12 months, and they're going to be different again as we move into the next 12-month period and beyond. And it's not just the pandemic which is creating that sort of change, but it's also the paper we haven't yet looked at, which comes at the end of this particular meeting, which is also going to drive change, obviously. And I just felt it might be appropriate to review that particular function a little bit more frequently rather than on an annual basis.
And it makes entire sense. It would presumably make sense really to either look at it every quarter. We could give you a service plan update and performance update that goes a bit beyond just the one measures we're quoting at the moment, or perhaps 6 monthly. That'd be for you to tell us which you prefer.
Well, my thoughts are that you've got an awful lot on your plate at the moment, and you will have over the next 6 months. And I wouldn't want to create work for the sake of it. If you feel that a quarterly update is appropriate over the next 2 quarters, then I would, as I'm sure we all would, accept your view. But I'm not going to push for that, knowing what else you've got to get on with.
I think I would be happy that certainly that either 3 monthly or 6 monthly. I would leave that for you to decide, because it's a matter really of looking at, I think we're talking here about looking at the service delivery plan in particular, and giving you a quarterly update as to what we're achieving in some of the projects. The other data that you're seeing, the performance that information that you get at the moment, obviously you get quarterly, and that will continue. It's just then what additional things you'd like to see from us is really where I was coming from. So the service delivery plan, usually we used to bring that back in June with an update, because obviously we set the service delivery plan in December and agree what the things that we're looking for will be. And then we bring the service delivery plan and update on it to you in June, alongside the risk register, which we also review every 6 months. So we could continue to do that, but if you wanted to see anything more regularly, then obviously we can work with you on that.
Okay, that seems okay for me. David, you had a view earlier. Is that consistent with what you think is appropriate?
As has been the norm for many years, I rely on Paul for guidance and his team for guidance. So yes, I'm happy to go with that.
Good. Thank you, Paul. We'll implement that if you'd be so kind then. And,
okay.
Perhaps we could take that offline at some point and agree a format. moving on then, because I think that is, again, electronic agendas, aren't they wonderful?
Yeah, this Chairman, this is to agree.
I'm just reading that bit, Julie. Yeah, that's where I was having to go back. You're quite right. It's different from when you've got a bit of paper, you can just flick to it. It's not quite straightforward. So yes, so our recommendations are that we agree the indicators identified, the targets, tolerance levels and levels of reporting, and to agree the use of the dashboard. Well, with that, one subtle change in the reporting element so that we can review things. Are we content with the report that Joe has presented to us? Looks like it. Everyone's indicating yes. Good. Well, Joe, thank you very much indeed. And I would just like to add my comments to those of Paul, both Stuart and yourself, for everything you've been doing for us in the time that you've been working alongside this a bunch of reprobates that we are here that keep sticking the knife in occasionally and not liking it and doing all sorts of other things. We've thoroughly appreciated both your time and effort and the quality of your reports that you've been giving us. At this stage, what I would like to say is we're very happy if you both wish to stay on to the very end of the agenda. That's items 12 and 13 if you wish. We wouldn't want you to disappear because other matters you might feel are compromising. I don't think we want to take that view at all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, once again, thank you very much indeed. So we move on to item 8, which is Adrian. There he is. He's down in the bottom left-hand corner. And a report to be noted, Adrian.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The welfare reform report, as members will be aware, is a standing item for every joint committee. And the usual format, if I may, Chair, is to go through the 4 matters of interest that I've highlighted in the report, and I'll just go over those. The first one at paragraph 2.1 is relating to universal credit, specifically at paragraph 2.18, and members have always been interested in the DWP's approach to helping people to claim universal credit, and will recall that this is now the 2nd year that service has been contracted to Citizens Advice. At the time of writing, frustratingly, and even now actually, DWP have not confirmed their plans for the forthcoming imminent financial year arrangement. We're led to believe that will be continued with CAB, Citizens Advice, into the 21-22 year, and there'll be a further review. We have noted our concerns and your concerns, members, that you've mentioned to me at previous joint committees. DWP are well aware of those, and they do undertake to a full review, but frustratingly has not happened yet. Secondly, draw members' attention to paragraph 2.23 in the 3rd bullet point there. Members will now be aware that at the government's budget last week, they extended the £20 per week uplift in universal credit for the first 6 months of the forthcoming financial year. So I can reassure members that this impacts on local council tax support. I can reassure members that the scheme is flexible enough to continue to ignore that increase in posting council tax support to council tax accounts, meaning that our residents will benefit from that £20 continuation of that uplift until the end of September 2021. So that's very good news. Third matter to bring to your attention is the increase in benefit uprating from April next year. That's been based on the September measure of CPI, which will be 0.5%, with exception of the state pension, which has the so-called triple lock, the lower of the CPI measure of inflation, average earnings or 2.5%. So the position where state pension increases by 2.5% from April 2021, and all other benefits increase by 0.5% from April 2021. I'm just checking if there's any other matter that I wish to bring for your attention. I think that's all. Chair, I'm happy to take questions. Otherwise, the report is just for noting as a recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. Do we have any questions for Adrian on his welfare report? My goodness, this is good stuff. Well, we've noted it, Adrian. I think we've all noted it. Thank you very much indeed, which moves on to the second part of the Adrian show, because that takes us on to agenda item. No, it doesn't. I beg your pardon. Helps if I go back to the agenda rather than the bullet points, doesn't it?
Agenda item 9, Chairman.
9, it is. Forthcoming issues, standing item, any other items? Well, we've already discussed one of them, which was a bit earlier. Are there any other issues that members wish that we debate or ask ARP to bring forward for us? My goodness, no. All right then. Well, June might be a quick meeting. Who knows? Time for a coffee. Good. Okay, item 10 then. We note the date, the 22nd of June. That could be quite significant, of course. Just to alert everyone, some of you may already be aware, there is considerable debate as to whether or not we are going to be able to meet in public come June. At the moment, Sam Chapman, our leader, was briefing us yesterday. There is still some clarification being sought by the LGA as to whether or not these meetings will continue virtually or whether we are able to meet in person. And of course, I'm sure we'll keep a weather eye on Prime Minister and his announcements and the LGA and advice that we're given. But as I said at the start of this meeting, hopefully our next one, we will be able to meet in person, if not all of us, but certainly in some form of hybrid way, perhaps. So it's 22nd of June at 11 o'clock, and we will have a 10 a.m. meeting, I imagine, next time, unless events overtake us and force that to be postponed. So that moves me on to item 11.
Chairman, Councillor Ambrose Smith wishes to speak.
Sorry, David, I missed you on the screen.
Sorry, I was a bit slow as I normally am. It's just a comment, really, Chair. I would prefer to carry on as we are and not make that 50-mile journey for me, and I'm sure 50-mile journey for everybody else, for what will be just a 1-2 hour meeting. Perhaps once a year we meet all together, but going forward, I'd like to think that we could still meet virtually like this. A lot more work gets done, not just at this meeting, but allows us to get so many other jobs done as well, which we all have a busy agendas, don't we?
I don't disagree with you at all, actually.
Okay. And also, I haven't got a pen.
Sarah, sorry.
No, I agree. I think these work really well. We've already got used to Zoom. Once a year, I don't have to travel very far to Thetford, so it doesn't affect me. But actually, the mileage people have to put in, the time of getting there, we're all busy people. Yeah, I'm a supporter of it. Thank you.
Well, good. Well, let's take that as a decision then. If everyone is content, unless we are informed, we can't do it, and that might well be what we're told. But we'll wait and see. But I agree, it does save a lot of time. It means we're much more efficient, and that's one of the things we're trying to achieve, is a higher level of efficiency. So yes, keep that under advisement, and I'm sure Julie and or Teresa will keep us on the straight and narrow when that event occurs. In that case, can we move on to item 11, exclusion of the press and public? We need to consider passing the following resolution: that under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 1, 2, 3 and 4 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A to the Act. Do we have a proposer for that motion, please? Thank you, David. And is that seconded? Yeah, thank you, Sarah. So, Teresa, we have proposed and seconded the motion that we exclude the press and public. So, can I ask you to work your magic, please?